if we could invite everyone to start taking their seats. Hello, my name is Sam Kellerman, and I am the current Student Alumni Board President.
And I'm Jordan Peschel, currently serving as Vice President of Campus Programming for Student Alumni Board.
And on behalf of this year's board, we would like to welcome you to tonight's second annual Distinguished Young Alumni Presentations. Before we begin tonight's presentation, there are a few people and organizations that we want to thank for making this event possible. First and foremost, we want to thank the Alumni Association and its Board of Directors for their continued support of DYA and all of Student Alumni Board's programming. We specifically want to recognize the Alumni Association President and CEO, Amy Buttonrins. We would also like to thank President Kirk Schultz and Vice President of Student Life, Dr. Pat Bosco, for their ongoing support and promotion of the Distinguished Young Alumni Program. Finally, we would like to extend a warm welcome to the families of our recipients this evening. We recognize the parents of Molly, Tim, and Lori. We also would like to thank Matt's parents, Doug and Patty, his grandmother, Dorothy, and his wife, Donnell, for joining us.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with Student Alumni Board, it is a group of about 35 students who serve the university by providing a physical link between the Alumni Association and past, present, and future K-Staters. Over the past 8 months, members of SAB have worked behind the scenes on the Distinguished Young Alumni Program in an effort to connect current students with some of the most passionate and accomplished K-State graduates under the age of 35. This year, we are excited to introduce to you our Distinguished Young Alumni Award recipients, the 2014 honorees, Ms. Molly Ham and Mr. Matt Wolters.
Before we jump into things this evening, as you walked in, you should have received a short survey regarding tonight's presentation. We ask that you fill these out, and at the conclusion of the evening, there will be members of SAB stationed at the exits, and if you can just drop it in the box, that would be great. Tonight, we will be hearing from both of our 2014 Distinguished Young Alumni honorees. Each honoree will be given the opportunity to deliver a 20 to 30-minute presentation, followed by a short Q&A session.
Our first honoree this evening is Ms. Molly Ham. Molly is a planning and research coordinator for the DREAM Project, a nonprofit that provides educational opportunities to at-risk youth in the Dominican Republic. She manages research projects and measures the impact of the organization's programs, and also is working to source K-State students as volunteers for the organization, establishing relationships with the College of Education and the international service teams based in the School of Leadership Studies. While at K-State, Molly served as a senator in the Student Governing Association, as president of Student Foundation, and as community service chair for Mortar Board Senior Honor Society, among other roles. She graduated summa cum laude from K-State in 2010 with degrees in secondary education, English, and international studies, with a minor in leadership studies nonprofit focus. She also earned a master's degree in international educational development from Columbia University in New York. And with that, please help us in welcoming Ms. Molly Ham.
And thanks, Sam, and for that wonderful introduction. I have to say it's been amazing to be back here at K-State. It's funny that the longer that you're away, sometimes the more it feels like home when you come back. And it feels like I was just here yesterday visiting or sitting in the same classes with the same professors that I've had the honor to meet with today. Although the students have changed, the feeling at K-State is exactly the same as I've always remembered it. First, I have to extend a thank you to the College of Education for nominating me for this prestigious award, for thinking of me, for supporting me and helping me grow and develop into a leader in the field of education, into a trained professional and a trained teacher, and also to the School of Leadership Studies for helping me grow into a leader in the nonprofit sector, and for always supporting me in any sort of academic or service pursuit that I chose to take on. And lastly, I would like to thank the K-State Alumni Association and the Student Alumni Board for planning this wonderful series of 3 days where I've had the opportunity not only to share my experiences, which is fun, but also to hear from the experiences of current K-State students, which is even more fun for me. And thank you to all of those who are here today, who maybe participated in those discussions in classes, or participated in those lunches or in those dinners that we've had so far. Let's see. I wanted to start off my remarks today with an image of the K-State Proud campaign. And many of you might be involved in the K-State Proud campaign. Actually, a show of hands, how many are either involved in planning the campaign or have donated already to the campaign? Wow. I mean, look around and see how many people have their hand raised at that moment. I would say that's about 75% of the people who are participating here in this event. And I think that shows the K-State family that we have here at the university. And that's something that really sets us apart from other universities. I mentioned that, or they mentioned in the introduction that I did my graduate studies after my time at K-State. And I learned a lot. And I loved the university that I attended, and I felt prepared for my career after receiving my master's degree. But the support that I received while here at K-State is incomparable. I mean, truly, after being at K-State, I feel part of something that's bigger than myself. And K-State is unique because it offers the opportunity not just for you to find yourself, which is part of what college is, understanding who you are and who you want to be and who you can become, but also allows you to find other people, to really think about who are the other people that you're here with that form part of this community. I think I found at K-State an opportunity to be part of a family where people care about what happens to one another, where people are truly invested in the growth and development of others, and not just while you're here, but also over the long term. So as they asked me to prepare my remarks today, the question was really to think about how what I learned at K-State has influenced my current personal and professional work. And the first thing I thought about was K-State Proud and the K-State family. And, you know, a common thread throughout my time at K-State, and then also in New York City through graduate school, and then with my current work in the Dominican Republic, has been a desire to be part of a community that inspires me to create positive change. And I started that work at K-State. Okay. So I wanted to introduce this idea to everyone because we talk a lot about community service and giving back and contributing to others in our daily lives. And sometimes I think that our ideas of service can be wrong or can be a bit misguided, in that we think that we see service as an add-on or as a requirement or something to complete, as something that's either a real or perceived requirement. We may need to fulfill service hours for an organization. We may need to fulfill service hours for a class. We may feel that doing community service will help us get a job or help us get into graduate school. And we filled sort of the leftover time that we have with this service. So some extra hours at the end of the day, an event here or there, and we call that service and we say, you know, I did my part. But it's also, when we see it this way, it's also something that can be very easily eliminated. If it's something that's not part of the way that we organize our lives and the way that we see the world, it's very easy to say that we don't have time. That we don't have time to participate in service, that we don't have time to give back to others. And so this quote really changes that perception. From Marian Wright Edelman at the Children's Defense Fund, that service is actually the rent that we pay for living. It's the very purpose that we have for living. And it's not just something that we do in our spare time, but it really requires us to organize our lives in a different way and to have a paradigm change about service as a mindset and a perspective and a new way of seeing the world that we live in. But I wouldn't say that this idea of the way we talk about service is the biggest challenge or the biggest obstacle. In fact, the biggest obstacle is probably ourselves. We tend to think that someone who is capable of making change is larger than life. You know, it's not us, it's somebody else. Someone who creates positive social change is somebody that's more passionate, more committed, more selfless, more talented than we are. We don't see ourselves capable of being that change or being the person who starts putting change in motion. And that's a problem, because it is somebody that we can be. We also sometimes don't see the problems as belonging to us. So not only do we say, I'm not capable of making a difference, but these problems are not my problems. In psychology, they talk a lot about the concept of diffusion of responsibility, and it's the idea that people are actually less likely to act or to assist or to intervene on behalf of others in need when there are others present. They don't see it as their responsibility. In fact, they assume that it doesn't matter if I don't act because others will. It's a group mentality. If there are many people present and someone's in need, I might hesitate before pitching in because I assume that others will step up and take the lead. And we're also much less likely to act when we don't know those who are affected personally. So we immediately give up our power and our ability to make change by simply thinking we don't have the capability to make a change and that these problems don't affect us, and thus it's not worth our time. But as John F. Kennedy shared with us, one person truly can make a difference, and absolutely everybody should try. We need to get out of our own way to be able to make a change and a difference, because our actions really can have an impact and really can have a difference. And I think we know this to be true. We see our friends, we see our professors, we see community leaders, government officials, activists making change. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast, but we see people doing it. We just need to see ourselves as capable of doing it too. It really, truly just takes one person to get a movement going. Now, after one person gets started, it takes a lot more people, but one person can get something started and can make a difference. It also takes courage to try, knowing that you might fail. All big change comes about because a small group of people got together, took action, and believed that they could make a difference despite sometimes impossible odds. It's knowing that you might fail the first, the second, the third, the 10th, or even the 20th time, and still being willing to get back up and try because it's something that you believe in. And so it's gathering a strength in numbers and finding those who are like-minded who will help you seek the change that you wish to impact in the world, because it requires many individuals coming together, being willing to fail, and being willing to put whatever it takes into making the change in the world that they hope to see. So how do we achieve this change, and what type of change are we actually looking for? I believe that humans have an innate desire to connect with others, to spend time with other people, to cherish other people. And it's what sets us apart from other living beings, right? We can communicate with other people, we can sense what somebody's needs are, and we can actually respond in a complex way, not in just a basic way of providing food or shelter, but we can respond in a complex way to the needs of others. And if you think about the last time that you spent a significant amount of time by yourself, reflecting, which is also very necessary, how long did it take you before you felt that you wanted to reach out to somebody else, whether it be through a text message, getting on Facebook to see what other people were up to, getting on Twitter, making a phone call, making a visit? We normally can't pass very much time without reaching out and connecting with somebody else. And this starts at birth. As babies, we're dependent on someone else for all of our needs. Our existence is completely dependent on the existence of others. And I think sometimes first-time parents really struggle with this because they spend a lot of time being independent and creating their own lives, and then a baby comes into the world and all of a sudden there's somebody else that's completely dependent on them for everything. But in that time, we really realize that it's possible for something to affect another human being and affect us too. To actually, even if it's indirectly, the suffering of someone else, someone that we love and someone that we care about, can also cause us to suffer. And I think this quote demonstrates the importance of that linkage, that really no individual and no nation can live alone, and any of us who feels that we can live alone is certainly sleeping through a revolution. Sometimes we really need to alter our perception in order to better understand how it is that we are all tied together. I love this piece here. This was done by a visual artist named Yang Liu in a piece called East Meets West, and it's an article that you can find online if you do a quick Google search. And she was born in China but lived in Germany since the age of 14, and she put together a series of images depicting the different cultural norms, beliefs, and values that she saw between the two cultures that she lived and that she called her own. So in the first series of images, we have a depiction of life at a party, or what it's like to go to a party. And on the left-hand side in the blue is an image of a party in Germany. And what do you notice about this party? The fact that the groups are small. There's 4 people, 3 people, mostly pairs, And there's even a few people there who are by themselves, who aren't connected to anybody else. In fact, there's not much of a sense of the group as a whole. We have no idea that all of these are in the same party. Everybody really seems to be doing their own thing, and the responsibility is on the individual to sort of fit in and to figure out what to do in this party scene. In contrast with the other image, where you see a circle, and you really see the group as a whole, and you see everyone connected in some way, and the responsibility really is of the group to ensure that others are included, and to ensure that others are involved at this party. In the second set of images, you have a depiction of what she considers to be underlying cultural values of independence on the left-hand side and dependence on the right-hand side. And when she talks about dependence, it's not the idea that the really basic, I depend on you for everything and to fulfill my needs, but it's really more the idea of interdependence and that recognition that we don't exist without the existence of other people, and my needs can only be met while your needs are being met, and perhaps we can help one another fulfill our needs together. Has anyone here read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for Highly Effective People? Raise your hand if you have. A couple people. We're doing a book club with that in the Dominican Republic right now, and he talks about this continuum of moving from dependence to independence to interdependence. And many of us never really reach this last stage, where we can actually maximize our performance and maximize our effectiveness by becoming more interdependent and realizing that, it's not just us, and that we can prioritize interdependence over our own individual pursuits and desires. So in college, I think most of us, or all of us, are really on a path of independence, which is completely normal and which is how it should be. It's oftentimes the first time away from home, the first opportunity you have to have full responsibility, to figure out who you are and who you want to be. And as I mentioned, this is normal. In that continuum, you have to reach the stage of independence before you can move on to the idea of interdependence. And college is a time of incredible personal change. And as we see here, change is the essence of life. Things don't stay the same for very long. Even K-State, every year you come back and something is different. So change is natural, and change is good, and change will happen. And we require a lot of energy to change ourselves. So sometimes we don't think about expending that energy on others as well. But the challenge really comes in realizing that it doesn't end with you, that your own personal growth and development isn't the end-all be-all, but rather it's thinking beyond that, surrendering who we are for what we could become, for willing to put ourselves out there and seek new, challenging experiences so that we can create a better life, not just for ourselves, but for others. It's really impossible to grow without stretching yourself outside of your limits. Our comfort zone, you can see it's actually very small. That's why they call it a comfort zone, or else it would just be the rest of the world. And the comfort zone is comfortable because it's familiar, and that's where we like to be. It's sort of when you don't want to wake up on the weekend at 7 a.m. because you're in your comfort zone, and unless you're absolutely forced to get out of it, you probably won't. You'll make a decision to stay where you are. This is the same with life. We need to actually make that conscious decision to step outside of our comfort zones into where they say, where the magic happens. I think in personal health and fitness, we're very familiar with the idea of no pain, no gain. We know that results take hard work. We know that hard work sometimes hurts and that it's going to be painful, but that on the other end, we'll come out healthier, we'll come out happier, maybe more capable of doing the work that we wanted to do in the first place, and better able to contribute to our own personal development and to those around us. But we're much less likely to do this in our personal and professional life. We're much less willing to take risks. In fact, we're afraid of failure, we're afraid of struggling, we're afraid of difficulty. And that's normal as well, but we need to push ourselves into the unknown and to be okay with messing up, to be okay with making mistakes, and to be okay not knowing immediately how to respond. And this is sort of the difference between having a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And those who've taken psychology classes or education will be familiar. And this is the idea that, what we know and what we believe and how we see the world is capable of changing. The knowledge that we have at one point in our life when we're 10 and when we're 15 and when we're 20 can change. And that's changed by experience. So we know that we can spend our whole lives that the brain is malleable and working to grow our minds and to open our minds and to do things with new experiences. And the fastest way to grow really is by choosing to immerse yourself with others who are different than you. And why is it important to know others who are different? Well, simply because those who are different have different worldviews than our own. We all have a window into a very specific world, and those who are different allow us to see a different world. And our culture and our society dictates a lot of what we think and what we feel, what we see, value, and believe. And our own culture can often be very invisible to us. It takes a lot of effort to step outside of your own culture and to objectively think about why you think the way you think and why you believe the way that you believe. And it takes even more effort than to recognize how other worldviews operate and why somebody else believes in a way that may be completely different than you. But those viewpoints that are the most different than yours are the ones that are the most important to know. Because different viewpoints really allow you to solve the toughest problems because it forces creativity. It's not just about seeing solutions in a different way, but it's also about seeing the problems in a different way. If you have a very different worldview and a very different perspective, you may not even define the problem in the same way, and that's important. And in the work that I do, it's a cross-cultural setting, and I work with local Dominican staff, and I also work with international staff, not just from the United States, but from other countries, France, Norway, Spain, and this happens to us on a regular basis. We really have to talk through and recognize our differences in the way that we see things, the way that we want to approach things, and the work that we want to do. We have to have an open space to talk about these differences, to work through the challenges, and then come up with solutions. And so the goal really is to be able to recognize differences and celebrate them, rather than to deny that they exist, because in the end, you can create a product that is that much greater. So I truly believe that it's impossible to recognize difference if you don't thoroughly know yourself. And the more that you become self-aware and know yourself, the more you can understand how you and your identity and your life experiences and your core values and your privileges interact with and affect others. Because without this knowledge, we may unwillingly be living life that subtracts value from the lives of others, that devalues the lives of those who are different than you, and perhaps takes away dignity. And the goal is really to respect and enhance the freedom of others, to actively work to ensure that the dignity and the value of others' lives is recognized. But this must always be done in collaboration with others. I had a great conversation today with the Theories of Leadership class about international work and international service and how to do it in a responsible way. And we talked a lot about the idea of doing service with others rather than doing service for others, not imposing our help or imposing our contributions on others. And I often think of times when someone in my life might have said to me, look, I think you have this problem, and here's how I think you can fix it. I mean, I tend to react strongly to that. If I don't agree on the problem or on the issue at hand, I will be much less likely and willing to listen to their ideas and then to take action together. So any type of service that we do in this world really needs to operate with the basic understanding of the actual needs of others, coming to agreement on what those needs are and how we can best work together to address them. I actually posted this image on Facebook the other day because the message struck home to me. Maybe because I'm not included in this category of rich people, because I am a young alumni. I'm receiving the Young Alumni Award. I don't have a lot of money and I don't have a lot of resources, but philanthropy is important to me. And so I think about what does that mean in my daily life, and I love the idea of saying that it's about simply loving other people, genuinely loving and caring for other people without restraint. But the question, I think, the decision that we all have to make is whether we choose to do so publicly or not, with both our actions and with our words. So as any good teacher would do, I would like to leave you with a challenge and a bit of homework. The College of Education did prepare me well, so I think that's my responsibility standing up here today. So as I mentioned, K-State is a unique opportunity to both find yourself, but also to find other people and become a part of a community and a movement that's much bigger than you. And so first I challenge you to really examine what you think you know or what you already know about yourself, about the way the world works, about who you are and what you value, your motivations, your beliefs, your interests, your worldview. But then spend some time thinking about what it is that you don't know. And I know it's very hard to figure out what we don't know because we don't know it. So my recommendation to you is to move past your comfort zone and learn about worldviews that are different than your own by simply talking to people, making the effort to talk to people who are different than you, that can provide a different perspective. Read something by somebody that you might not otherwise have read, and see if you can gain a healthy respect and learn to appreciate and validate those other worldviews. Although you may not agree with them, although you may not accept and practice them, you will be more successful by being able to think about how to respect the two of them and that they can coexist in the same world. I think in this way, we can all find success wherever we go, simply because jobs and awards and money and titles, these all come and go. I think in 10 years, nobody will remember what job title I had right now or how much money I'm making, and I probably won't remember that either. But what I hope that people remember is the impact, that I was able to have or that we were able to have, and also, most importantly, the way I treated others. And so I encourage you to, above all, leave a legacy of love. Thank you. Okay. So now I think we have an opportunity to ask questions. If you would like, I'm happy to answer any question that you have. I was a student and also alumni now, so I might have some answers or at least some opinions. Yeah, right here.
What have been some experiences or opportunities you've had to explore what it means to really serve with and not for people? And are there any instances where you were forced to step back and reevaluate how you were serving?
Yeah.
In your work that you do now?
So the question was about examples of instances where I was able to learn more about serving with others rather than serving for others, and any instances where I had to maybe reevaluate the work that I was doing and the service that I was doing, or the way that I was doing it. And that's actually very relevant to the work that I do now with the DREAM Project, because we do have many volunteer groups who come throughout the summer, who come throughout the full school year, and who are interested in volunteering and contributing. And so sometimes it's understanding how to balance the needs of those and the interests of those volunteer groups, and also the needs and interests of the community. And I think we've looked back reflectively and thought, in some instances in the past, maybe some of those service groups were not as successful because they weren't truly meeting some of the needs that we have in our community. So we've done a careful job of rethinking the purpose of our service groups, how we prepare the service groups before they come, what types of readings we suggest, what types of opportunities for reflection that we give while they're there, what kind of wrap-up that we give at the end, giving space for people to talk about issues, trying to make it be more of a service learning model, which is also something I learned at K-State. All of these things we're in the process of doing, and it's a journey, I think, to be a responsible volunteer and a responsible facilitator of service learning or international projects. But we're definitely in the process of working on that. Question? In the back there.
What are some habits that you focused on during your time at K-State that you think really helped you achieve success?
Habits that I focused on that led to my success. That's a good question, habits. There's some habits I wish I would have acquired. What did I actually do? I think I acquired the habit, or tried to at least practice the habit of looking for feedback from others and being willing to reflect on my own abilities and improve based on what others suggested. I think that's sometimes the most difficult thing that we do, understanding what we do well and what we don't do so well, being willing to hear that feedback honestly, and then taking it and running with it and doing something with it. There's people only are going to tell you things because they care about you and they want to help you grow and develop, and sometimes you have to intentionally seek out that information, but it's definitely worth it to do it, to really see how others feel that you could improve in certain areas, what they would recommend, how they would do things differently. it's a great way to not only live, right now while you're an undergraduate, but in the workplace and in the family and throughout the future. Yeah.
You talked about in your presentation going from like dependent to independent and interdependent.
Mm-hmm.
So moving to the Dominican Republic is a really long ways away. So how do you identify someone that you can someone that could help you kind of while you're there, your support group once you got there?
Good question. So talking about the independence and interdependence and dependence continuum, and how do I identify a support group during my time in the Dominican Republic, because it was a far move. I'm looking at my parents over there in the corner, and they probably say they serve as a support group through Skype calls whenever we get the chance. But we're really lucky in the fact that a lot of staff in the organization where I work and a lot of volunteers are at a similar life stage as I am. We're close to the same age, we hold some of the same values and some of the same beliefs, so we have a lot of opportunities, and this is both international and local Dominican staff. We have a lot of opportunities to share in the challenges and the frustrations and the joys and the fun celebrations as well, which is really nice. I think sometimes you can find that in your coworkers and in the community members, and this just happens to be, in this instance, they're all the same people. My friends are my coworkers, are my fellow community members. We're all together, and they've served as a great support group, aside from my family, who are always there to listen to me vent as well. Yeah, back there and then here.
Was that sparked while your time here at K-State, or how did you figure all that out?
Yeah, how did I figure out that I was interested in the things that I was interested in? And I would say that K-State absolutely fostered that in me. First of all, there was amazing mentors that I had during my time here, and I have to give a shout out to Mary Toller and Olivia Collins and to Jan Wisman for inspiring that ideal for service in me. All three of them are very involved in the community, are very committed to civic leadership, and they really inspire that in students, and they push us to not only think about these issues, but also walk the talk and really commit ourselves to service. And it's definitely something that I discovered. I wasn't very involved in service when I was younger in high school, although my mom really tried. She really tried to get me more involved, but I guess I wasn't quite ready at that time in my life and didn't quite understand exactly how it fit in. But K-State, yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, sorry, right there.
You talked a little bit about good habits. My question is, what were some bad habits you had to cut out of your life while you were
Ooh. Okay, bad habits that I had to cut out of my life when?
like while you were at K-State?
While I was at K-State. Well, I would say probably a bad habit that I acquired during my time at K-State was being maybe overcommitted and involved in too many things and not taking proper care of myself. And I think sometimes when we believe passionately about things, we put everything we have into that, and you have to spend time to think about, your own personal health and your own personal work-life balance, and how much you can dedicate to your work and how much you can dedicate to the other people that you care about. And breaking that habit can be hard. Sometimes we're addicted to work and we're addicted to keep things moving forward, but it's always healthier when we find a better balance, and it's also a process. Some days are easier than others.
I think we have time for one more question, if there's one.
Oh, sorry, back there.
What was the biggest cross-cultural challenge that you found when you moved to the Dominican Republic, and how did you navigate that as a young woman in a male-dominated society?
Good question. The biggest cross-cultural challenge, I think, well, in the workplace, so I'll get to that second part of the question later. The first part of the question is the biggest cross-cultural challenge, and it's been working in a professional capacity in another country where people have very different perspectives about how to address issues, how to work on a team, different values about what it means to be direct or to be indirect when you're talking, how we give feedback, how we receive feedback, how honest we feel that we can be with each other, how comfortable we are talking about issues that are sensitive and that are a little bit more difficult. I think that that's something that I struggled with a little bit, adapting my own behavior in a way that was more respectful or more sensitive to the way that the staff that I work with would respond. You know, being able to talk to somebody and try to understand how they're feeling or what they need, but in a way that they would feel comfortable sharing that with me. I think that was a big challenge, absolutely, for me. And then you mentioned the second part about how did I navigate that in a male-dominated society. Correct, yeah. So, well, you know, actually most of the people that work at the organization are women. So in my professional work, that hasn't become an issue. And also the males that we do work with are wonderful. I mean, they're educators. They are deeply committed to working with children, to positive social change in their community, as are many men in the local community as well. I mean, the biggest challenge that I would face as a female in another country is probably, you know, basic issues of harassment, which might not be considered harassment by those who are making comments or trying to talk with me, but might make me uncomfortable coming from a society where people are not as forward or direct. But I haven't felt in any way, you know, threatened, but that's also a privilege of mine being, you know, a foreigner. You know, I'm not a Dominican woman, so Dominican men don't treat me the same that they treat Dominican women.
All right, well, thank you, Molly. And now we would like to invite our second honoree, Mr. Matt Walters, to the stage. Matt is co-founder and co-owner of Surefire Ag Systems Incorporated, a company that designs and manufactures solutions to apply fertilizer and chemicals to crops and fields throughout Kansas, the U.S., and the world. In addition to Surefire Ag Systems, Matt and his partners founded the Dream Big Foundation, which promotes and provides resources to enhance science, technology, engineering, agriculture, and math education in the Rawlins County USD 105 school district. Matt also helped reorganize the Kansas FFA Foundation and serves as a member of the Rawlins County Hospital Board and the Kansas Agricultural Rural Leadership Program. While at K-State, Matt served as a College of Agriculture ambassador, as well as member of the Blue Key Senior Honor Society and Student Governing Association, among other roles. He graduated from K-State in 2003 with a degree in agricultural economics. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Matt Walters.
Thanks, Jordan. Mic's on. Everybody can hear me very well. They gave that mic to me beforehand, and here about 4:45, and went to make sure it was working. And they said, you can just keep it. And then at that point in time, I needed to use the restroom before we got started, and I had to double check it about 7 times before I entered, so I didn't commit that infamous mistake from the Naked Gun movies that I enjoyed watching as a kid growing up. So fortunately, those double checking worked. It's working now, so we're ready to kick off. First of all, a few words of thanks. I'm going to set Molly's notes aside. I don't want to be giving the wrong speech here. That might be kind of odd. First of all, to the Student Alumni Board, thank you for all of your work in terms of putting together a really outstanding whole young alumni program. It has really been remarkable. I've enjoyed the opportunity to be back on campus. So thank you. And also, I would also like to thank you for the most remarkable pen that I have ever owned in my life. It's just a true joy to utilize this pen. I didn't realize that was possible, but they gave this to me yesterday, and it's amazing. So thank you for that as well. I would like to thank Blue Key and specifically Cassie Kern for putting together the application, and I know there were several people that helped in that process, but truly an honor to be nominated and the work that they did. I know it was no small task, so thank you very much for taking the time and making the nomination. The folks over in the College of Agriculture, that was my home on campus when I was here. It was so good to be back over there over the last couple of days, as it's always nice to go home. And to everybody over there, first of all, thanks for welcoming me back. But perhaps more importantly, thanks for providing me the education and the experience that moved me out into the world to do some of those things that I've had the opportunity to do. Two more. All of those folks in the room that served as my mentors. There are former teachers from high school. Mr. Dillon is here, Mr. Dillon's wife. Professors that I had on campus, several members of my family that are here, and certainly I wouldn't be standing here to receive this recognition without those years of support from my family, and then all the people that have made an impact and been a mentor to me. So to all of you in the room, thank you very much. Very much appreciated. And then finally, as I've been visiting with campus and people are like, okay, so tell us your story. And it becomes very apparent that the reason why ultimately I was selected for this honor was because of the success of Surefire Ag Systems. There's some other very valuable experiences that I've been involved with, organizations that I've been a member of, but I struggle to think that had it not been for the success of that business, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is specifically, that I wouldn't be here. And certainly, as Jordan said in the bio, I was a member of the team that originally, the original three partners that organized that business and put it together. But I was simply one member of that original group, and over the course of the last 6.5 years, the success that we have realized has been the result of every individual within the organization. So I would be remiss to not start out by thanking what we somewhat jokingly and affectionately refer to as the Surefire Nation in their hard work and dedication to creating that success that I've had the opportunity to be a small piece of. So with that, I just wanted to start by thanking those individuals. I'm going to do two things this evening. First of all, I'm going to show some slides and kind of walk through what it is that Surefire does. That's always kind of the, can you still hear me if I step away from that podium? I'll move around a little bit. I can't stand still for that long. Everybody wants to know, well, what is it that you do? We're an ag equipment company. We operate in a relatively small niche within the industry, but as you dive more specifically and you really truly want to know and understand what it is we do, it takes a little bit in order to do that. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about a few thoughts, a few lessons perhaps that we can take with us and apply. So first of all, the theme for this is going to be the misfits. And I'll start off by telling you where this term comes from, and that is, so we live in, does this? I don't know, can you see the laser pointer on the screen? Okay, all right. So obviously, this is a map of Kansas. It looks like, for whatever reason, it's a really long state, even longer than normal. I don't know what happened there. I just snipped it right off of Google Maps. It seemed okay when I did it, but nonetheless, Atwood, Kansas is right here. For those of you that are from this region of the state, you probably drove past Colby on your way to the mountains. Well, if you would stop at Colby and hang a right, head 30 miles north, you would run into the village of Atwood. 1,200 people in Atwood, just about 2,500 people in Rollins County. This is home to me. It's been the home to the Walters family since prior to the turn of the 19th century, where I grew up and ultimately where I returned after 5 blissful years at K-State and a year as traveling the country. I ended up back home. I also highlighted this area right here. That is Eskridge, Kansas. That's actually where my mother grew up, and I have the opportunity of taking care of the family farm that she grew up on down there. So there's a few hundred acres down there that I get back and take care of, and I get to operate that as my farm. So that's my that's what it's a hobby, but nonetheless one that I enjoy doing. So anyway, back to the Misfits. So this is, I wanted to give you an idea of in terms of where Atwood is located, where we operate at. It's 304 miles from the front door of Bramlage Coliseum to Atwood. I've made that drive just a few times over the years, as well as many of these people sitting right over here that are from back home as well. So this is a little bit closer view. So this is the village that you would run into after you took that right turn at Colby, landed in Atwood, drive down into, there's a creek that runs through here. Sometimes back home you call that a crick, not a creek. This is the crick, and we have a scenic Lake Atwood that has water in it 2 years out of every 10. When it does have water, it's beautiful. And then 4 miles north is where we ended up founding Surefire Ag Systems. We set in a farmstead right up here. I found it very interesting when I again snipped this off of Google Maps that at this resolution there's 2 things that are highlighted in Atwood. Surefire, which I thought that was interesting that was on there, and Casey's Carryout Pizza. It seemed incredibly random that, you know, there's a few other things there, but that's what you get, Surefire and Casey's Carryout Pizza. So anyway, who in the room is from a small town? Okay, we've got a lot of small town people. And I don't know the dynamic as we move into bigger places, but it probably exists in some point. But there's very much, in a small town, the conventional wisdom is always to be the naysayer. You know, whatever's going on, the conventional wisdom is to be the naysayer. And you know, if we were analyzing this from a probability standpoint, if we were a gambler, that's probably the safe bet. And the biggest concentration of naysayers is the coffee shop crowd. Because that's where you get together and there's just all sorts of naysaying, and we've identified everything that could possibly go wrong. And I've often remarked that if at any point in my life you find me with the coffee shop crowd, you probably just need to commit me to the nut house, because that's what's happened. So anyway, the coffee shop crowd hangs out here and they naysay. And of course, 6.5 years ago, when myself and my partner started Surefire Ag Systems, we're located, the significance in this difference, we're outside of town, we're on a road that only drives into our driveway, so you can't drive through and inspect our business like people do, you know, after they get done with coffee, then they drive around and inspect people's business. And one of those individuals was talking with Blaine, my partner, and he said, you know, you guys are really just a bunch of misfits up there north of town. And we were like, well, that's not very complimentary, really, if you think about it. But that was kind of the conventional wisdom, is that you were a bunch of misfits. I got to thinking about that. So what exactly is a misfit? So I went to Google. Usually when people gave these presentations, they would say Webster's Dictionary defines, but in this day and age, we go to Google, and we define it. So it's a person whose behavior or attitude sets them apart from others in an uncomfortably conspicuous way. Okay, well, that's all right. Well, but then again, not being the brightest bulb to ever walk the face of the earth, I was like, well, what really does conspicuous mean? So I had to go to Google again and define conspicuous as to say to stand out, to be clearly visible. Okay, so we see that it's kind of an attitude that sets us apart, sometimes in an uncomfortable way in which we are very, very visible. And as I started to think about this concept of leadership in terms of these definitions of misfits, there's more truth to the coffee shop naysayer crowd using it in a negative connotation as a bunch of misfits up on the hill that is really the reality. Sure, you want to call us misfits? That's all right. Yeah, we have a behavior attitude that sets us apart in a way that makes you uncomfortable, because the conventional wisdom says that you're not going to be successful. And then this is the other piece about it, is that leadership requires being clearly visible, and sometimes that's the piece that we're not comfortable with, is the fact that we have to do it being clearly visible. We'll come back to that after we talk just a little bit about what we do at Surefire. So hold that thought. Just a little bit about my journey for those of you. So how did I move from the chair at K-State to back home being in business in Surefire? So September 1998 to February today of 2013, I started at K-State. K-State for me was very much a family tradition. My family has had season football tickets since long before I was in existence. And in this picture, there are at least 13 undergraduate degrees, I believe, 12 or 13, or will be 13 when my cousin Kevin completes his undergraduate degree in biological and agricultural engineering in another couple of years. And then over here, we have my niece and nephew and hopefully a couple of future K-Staters right there. So K-State was a family tradition for me. In 1993, were you guys born in 1993? But just barely? Okay, that's what I was figuring. This is the Weiserloch Copper Bowl, the first bowl game experience of the modern era. You know, we had that one event like 11 years prior in 1982, but this was the first bowl game of Bill Snyder's career. We won this game 52-17. I had the privilege of being there, and I think I was in 7th grade at the time, and it was such a momentous occasion that I came back and I convinced my mom or my brother, I can't remember which one, to actually carve the score in the back of my head. I have no idea why, but as a 7th grader, I thought it was cool. 52-17. Always remembered that ever since. And then I was also on campus in November of 1998 for this very momentous occasion in which Bill Snyder parted the Red Sea, so to speak, and we defeated the Huskers from the northern lands for the first time since the 1960s. And really, I had to put this picture in here because my wife, we just got married in August, is a Husker, born and bred in Nebraska, and so I had to put this in here. Some of you may be wondering if I am in this crowd right here. No, I am not, but 2 years later when we beat them again, I was very much in the middle of this. So nonetheless, K-State is a family tradition, and we certainly enjoy coming back for numerous events. I was a member of Beta Sigma Psi fraternity. My dad and my older brother were both Beta Sig, so I didn't have a choice where I was going to school. I didn't have a choice where I was living. That's just what the way it was going to be. When I was on campus, I was a College of Ag ambassador. I served in Ag Senate, served as chair of the Student Senate, was a member of Blue Key, and then I ended up graduating in May of 2003. And 5 years later, I had no more of a clearer vision of what I truly wanted to do with my life than I did in Leisure 001 at 8:30 on Monday morning when I started K-State in Randy Peitch's Expository 1 writing course. So after college, I spent a year working for the National Beta Sigma Psi fraternity as what I affectionately referred to as a traveling fraternity man. As I've remarked to several of you that saw me throughout the day, this was the perfect after-college job because it was still like being in college, only on lots of college campuses, and they gave me a paycheck. And then after that, I had slept on one too many fraternity house couches, woke up at the University of Illinois one morning in April of that year and said, you know, this is fun. I've enjoyed working with those chapters and believe there were some places where we were able to move the needle forward, but decided it was probably time to do something else. So I went back home, helped out on the farm for the summer, and ended up working at the J.D. Skiles Company for 2.5 years. And then, again, for those of you that have heard me throughout the day, that ominous, seems like an ominous day to quit your job, Friday, July 13th, 2007. At the time, we didn't really think about it. We were so wrapped up in what it was we were about to do, but you look back and you're like, well, Perhaps if you were a superstitious person, that's probably not the day you would pick to quit your job and start a business. But nonetheless, we did. So this is the original Misfits. 6.5 years ago, my brother, his wife, Blaine, and Aaron. And then in the back is Nicholas Bowles, who was with us from day one. Nicholas and I have been good friends since we were in 7th grade, and he joined the team as well. One of the things that I've talked about in some of the classes is that in entrepreneurship, there's this element of risk that you have to get over. You know, there's no sure things. Well, when we started, at that point in time, I lived in my parents' basement. I did that right up until 4 months before my 30th birthday, and it really didn't move out because I didn't like living in my parents' basement. I just couldn't psychologically deal with the fact that I was going to turn 30 and still live in apartment B. So my birthday's in November, so in July or August, I bought a house in town. Point of that is I didn't have many liabilities in the world. I wasn't married, and the only thing I had to worry about was a cell phone bill. Josh wasn't going to start full-time with us. We were going to be able to utilize his skill and talent, but he was going to maintain his full-time job, and so that leaves Blaine and his wife Erin, who you can obviously see is pregnant. They had 3 other children at the time, and one on the way. And so the whole being okay with the risk of starting a business, very much give credit to Aaron. Blaine was the sales manager where we worked before, was very comfortable from a financial perspective, and conventional wisdom would have been to continue on maintaining financial security and stability for the family. Blaine's a risk taker, so we would expect him to be willing to do it. But to Aaron, much credit is due for being willing to take that step and take that risk. Because the reality of it is that would have surefire happened without any one of the 3 of us? Maybe so, you don't know. But what I'm very confident of is the success we realized wouldn't have happened because of the value of teamwork and collaboration. So fast forward to 6 years this summer. This is what the team looks like today. As I said earlier, this group of individuals is what makes Surefire happen. You'll see the employee-owned icon down here. We had a philosophy of employee ownership and engagement. I'll talk just a little bit about that more from the time we started. Of these people, I think there's 15 or 16 folks that fall into our employee ownership pool now as well. So that's a core principle that we believe greatly in. Okay, so now what is it that you actually do, Matt? That's the $64,000 question some days of the week. And if you don't come from an ag background, some of this kind of may all seem foreign to you. So I'll do my best to present it in a way that you can kind of walk away and say, okay, I understand a little bit about what's going on. So in a 1-sentence description, we are the experts in fertilizer application and control. So ultimately, we have examples here of 4 different types of farm equipment. In the top left-hand corner, we have a corn planter. The top right-hand corner, anybody have any idea what this apparatus is? That's a potato planter. Down here in the bottom right-hand corner, anybody want to venture at that one? An air drill, yeah, an air seeder used for planting small grains in this part of the country, specifically wheat. They'll also be used for canola and some other small grain type crops throughout the country. And then over here we have a piece of fertilizer equipment that we call a strip till machine, used for preparing for spring planting. So ultimately, a farmer has one of these pieces of equipment already on the farm that they're using for seeding of some crop or just fertilizing. They need to apply fertilizer, or they have a desire to apply fertilizer, and in our world we specifically work with liquid fertilizer on board this piece of equipment. Okay, So then we essentially divide that down into three components. There's a pumping system, a manifold and distribution component, and then the control and how we integrate the technology. How are we going to control this pump in order to apply the accurate rate, to apply the exact dosage in terms of a rate per acre that they want to achieve. So these three very general components is what we put together and then provide to the customer to achieve that fertilizer application need. A couple of examples. These are examples of pumps mounted on two different planters. This is a high volume pump. This would be used to apply 10 to 50 gallons per acre. This pump is a low volume pump. It would be used to apply, maybe 3 to 5 gallons per acre. So the scenario that the producer, the farmer wants to achieve drives which particular option they need here. And you don't have to understand farming to understand the fact that the difference between 3 gallons per acre and 30 or 40 or 50 gallons per acre is a big multiplier. So you can very loosely wrap your mind around the fact that these have to be two very different things in order to achieve that desire to achieve that application need. So we recommend the right solution for the job that the producer wants to do. This slide gets a little bit busy, so you'll have to forgive me. But manifold and distribution is a fancy word for plumbing. These are hoses, fittings. There's nothing, super unique about this stuff. This is just, but we just need the right components to do the job that they want to do. So here we see this hose right here. This would be a component that we add on. In the bottom left-hand corner, these are valves. So this particular planter is 40 feet in width. But not all fields are square, believe it or not. Some of them are, depending on where you're at, very misshapen. And so when you're planting with this 40-foot wide tool and you have curved edges on a field, what the producer wants to do is minimize the overlap. So as we pull into an area that is already fertilized, when it's at an angle like this and I'm driving this way, my last piece of my equipment when it crosses the border here, I've overlapped this entire triangle, right? And so by putting valves, we can turn off sections of that implement so we minimize that amount of overlap. Minimizes using too much product. So from a financial implication to the farmer, there's a cost savings in order to do that. As well as, depending on what product we're using, in certain cases it's not friendly to that growing environment or friendly to the soil to apply too much. Over here, this is kind of the final point. This hose comes down. This is going to be dropping the fertilizer right out of this tube. So again, it's just components. But depending on whether you see, here we've got a red planter, here we've got a blue planter, all these things are going to be different from manufacturer to manufacturer. So it's very important to have the right equipment for the job. Then the last piece is the integration of control and technology. In this day and age, producers, farmers on progressive farms vastly have adopted some sort of a technology platform, essentially just a computer in the cab that is controlling and managing the various functions that are going on within that tractor. First of all, it starts with GPS. And the fact that this unit, either one of these, actually you can see this picture right here, this represents the tractor. This area is where he's already worked. And this is the guidance line, so this machine is driving the tractor straight down that line. all of these functions, or all of these computers have the ability to also very precisely control the liquid application that they want to apply on board that particular, whatever particular piece of equipment that it is. So these are made by technology manufacturers. We don't make this. They've built the capability in, but there's a bit of a disconnect from how do I actually take this capability and put the rubber to the road, so to speak, and making it perform the function. And that's where we've developed a high level of expertise, is in providing the right electronical components in order to do that. So then, yeah, that is the control and technology piece. So what makes us different, and that's this process of custom configuring. Every farmer, when it comes to applying fertilizer, has a different preference in how they want to do it. Certainly, it's very easy to think that, well, from geographic region to geographic region, climates are different, conditions are different, soil types are different. Anybody ever done any gardening? In certain areas you might say, well, I can't grow a stinking any potato or a tomato to save my life here, but across the street, so-and-so, they raise great tomatoes. Well, there's differences in soil, so from different regions, but also just farmer to farmer, there's different preferences. So what we do is we have a 3-stage process where we utilize a method to collect information about the scenario. What kind of equipment is it? Is it a red planter? Is it a green planter? Is it a blue planter? What type of fertilizer, at what rate are they wanting to apply, so we can get that pump size correctly. So we take all this information, then we create a configuration, we present that to the customer, and then ultimately, once our sales process is complete, it goes over, and this was a picture taken last week. We had 35 pallets sitting on our dock last week, headed to various locations across the country in order to deliver those components packaged together to meet individual farmer requirements. And then to the field they go. So these are just a couple of pictures of our equipment. Right. Many times you don't even, if we do our job right, in terms of our stuff should meld into the equipment, and you really wouldn't ever know that it was there. So in this example, this is our equipment right here. In this example, we've got a pump here. We provided a tank. We can kind of see some manifold and plumbing over here. But our goal is to make that absolutely a seamless integration, because there's a for one thing, we want it to be very clean, but there's a pride factor amongst farmers that these rigs that we're looking at right here are well, altogether they've got to be north of $250,000 real easily, if not north of $300,000, and so they don't want it to look like a cobbled together mess, just to be quite frank. So they're in the field, and it's time to utilize the equipment. These examples are planting corn and putting down fertilizer while they do that. So that's the crux of what it is that we do from a product standpoint. Just wanted to provide that little bit of overview for you all as well. We also have started another company called Surefire Electronics, and this company is specifically focused at making wiring harnesses. When we talk about integrating that technology, Surefire Ag uses a lot of wiring harnesses, something that may look like this right here. And so we were having problems with a vendor providing us a quality, reliable product. After 2 years of struggling with that, we said, hey, we think we can do this. The cost to get into business isn't too great. So we invested in some equipment. These are presses for pressing the little metal connector ends onto the wire. We set this up as an outside entity because our goal is to grow this into a business that is doing more than simply providing for our needs. one of our key growth areas over the next several years, and also provides a piece of diversification so that, you know, it's our goal that we certainly want to service customers within our industry, that being agriculture, but we also hope to be able to find some folks outside of that to provide us a little bit of industry diversification. And then the most recent initiative that we've just gotten into, this one we're the majority owner of. We've got some other partners involved. This is a First Water Ag. It's an irrigation technology business in order to control the amount of water applied to different regions of the field on center pivot irrigation. So traditionally, these sprinklers go around in a circle. They apply the same amount of water everywhere. The reality is that you know, within that field, there's varying conditions that may result on how much water a particular area can hold. So we don't want to overwater. There's areas that are more productive naturally. We may want to provide more water in those areas. So this is a new endeavor that we're just embarking upon. Also very timely because of the concern over water utilization. If those of you that are involved in the industry, I'm sure, are very aware of the discussions relative to the depletion of irrigation within the state of Kansas, but in those areas across the country, there's not an area that exists that is not talking about how do we utilize water more efficiently. In order to save and conserve. And ultimately, it's going to come down to a debate between agricultural uses and, you know, city, municipality, commercial type uses. We're seeing that in California right now for any of you that are paying attention to how the drought is impacting the Central Valley area, you know, around Fresno. Historic droughts, things that have never occurred before. So we don't really know where this one's going to take. We just launched this initiative in September, and we're still figuring it out. The point of that is that if we get to our business principles, you'll see these are our mission statement, provide farmers custom compatible complete solutions. That's what we just talked about. Mutually beneficial partnerships, that's really related to the business. But then there's two things right down here that don't have anything to do with product. And that is, we want to be a long-term economic engine in Rollins County, Kansas. We put that map up there before. Rural western Kansas, 2,500 people in the county, 1,200 people in the 1,200 people in Atwood. And so those other business initiatives are an effort to provide, to be that long-term economic engine. So we're constantly searching for those opportunities and trying to put them in place. Three things that are central to what we do. We practice a philosophy of open book management. We strive to create a culture of employee empowerment. And then I mentioned earlier that we are now have employee owners. Open book management is a philosophy of sharing all of the financial information of the business throughout the entire organization. It's a very, very powerful tool. There's no secrets. Every Monday morning, everybody in the company reviews our income statement, year to date and for the current month. It doesn't matter whether you've been there since the beginning or whether you're a seasonal employee that started last week. You're a part of this open book meeting that happens every Monday morning. And that leads to employee empowerment, to have a team that whatever your role is, whatever your responsibility is, that you know what that is, you know how you contribute, and ultimately are empowered to make decisions that lead to the success of the business. And then lastly, the employee ownership piece. That's a little bit about what we do at Surefire. Got a few thoughts that I want to share relative to thinking about leadership and service, and then we'll wrap it up with a few questions, and we'll be ready to roll. So, back to this concept that we talked about in terms of misfit leadership. I'm just going to leave those up there so that we can reference them. And this concept of, like we said earlier, a person whose behavior or attitude sets them apart from others, and you have to be able to do that in a clearly visible way. Well, the definition of a misfit has fit me from a long time, and if you would ask my parents and my grandma sitting over there, I think there's some story about when I was just at that age where could I go up for the children's sermon at church or should I not? And, well, I went and proceeded straight to the piano and proceeded to become an attitude that set me apart from others and probably made Mom rather uncomfortable because it was in a clearly visible way. And so that concept of doing something that goes against convention, to me, is a key component of leadership. You've got to want to do something different. You have to want to have a desire to evoke some means of change. And in order to do that, you've got to be comfortable with these two things. Two quick lessons that I just think are absolutely important. Several years back, I was reading what they call the autobiography of Martin Luther King Jr. And Molly had a quote from Dr. King as well. But in there, he specifically talks about, it was in 1953, and he had met Coretta, and he was finishing his studies in Boston, his theological doctorate. And they had three options in terms of where they were going to go. Two of those were in northern areas, and one of them was the Dexter Baptist Church in Montgomery. And in that passage, he talks about the discussions that they had relative to what they were going to do. And fully recognizing that at that point in time, a life for them and for their family in one of those northern churches would have been a much easier path, but recognized a need and a desire to go back to the south. And of course, the story of the leader, and I would argue that to a certain extent, or to a large extent, that you could have defined King's leadership of that movement as being somewhat of a misfit. But it was because of that choice. It was because it was very conscious. It was very conscious. It wasn't by happen chance that they knew exactly what the case was, and so many times making that choice is not necessarily the easiest choice. It's not necessarily going to that's just it. It's not going to be easy. But because you believe in something, because you want to evoke change, you're willing to do it. So the first thing to think about is that concept of wanting to evoke change, and the fact that it's not easy. You have to make a decision that you want to do something. So that's the first thing. And then I'm going to jump to a completely different historical figure. And well, I don't even really know if it's a historical figure, but I'm a huge Jimmy Buffett fan. I don't know how many. I've been to somewhere at least 10 Jimmy Buffett concerts over the last 15 years. And Buffett is obviously known for kind of this very laid-back, lackadaisical culture, the parrot head culture. You know, if you go to a Buffett event, they're just absolutely an amazing time. But the thing, a couple of things about Buffett is that if you really study him, behind the culture that he's created is an incredibly hardworking, passionate individual about what he does. Think about all the restaurants and the places and the things that he's built around that, and that's because of his dedication. And so one of the themes that Buffett talks about in one of his books is the concept of taking what you do seriously, but not taking yourself too seriously. And I think I'm a huge believer of that. I'm very passionate about what we do at Surefire. It's a vehicle to be that long-term economic engine, but I absolutely refuse to take life too seriously. And I think that is so very important because it's too short. It's too short to take yourself too seriously in that context. Very important to take what you do seriously, but let's have some fun and enjoy the process while we go. So that's the first lesson from Buffett. The second lesson is one of my favorite Jimmy Buffett songs. It's called Last Mango in Paris. And it's this story about, I don't know whether it's about Jimmy or whether it's about a kid, but the character's name is Jimmy. And he goes down to the dock, and there's this guy by the name of Captain Tony there. And he starts asking him questions about what he's done. And he tells all these stories, and Jimmy's just absolutely fascinated by him. But the chorus of the song is that, and I wrote it down here so I made sure I get it right, that I ate the last mango in Paris, I took the last plane out of Saigon, I took a first-class boat to China, but Jimmy, there's still so much to be done. And then there's several more stories about all these great things and these great adventures that Captain Tony has done, but the message is always, there's still so much to be done. And I firmly believe that in terms of leadership. It doesn't matter, or service for that fact of the matter. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter, whether you're residing in small town rural America, whether you're in New York City. There's still so much to be done, and we've never arrived. It doesn't matter how many places around the world Captain Tony had been, or the wonderful adventures that he had had. There was still so much to be done. And I think about that in terms of a service and a leadership model, and the fact that we all have so much left to be done. For me, that really rang true back home in Atwood. We had, we talked about the coffee shop crowd and the naysayers. On the other side of that, there are people that truly believe that there's still so much to be done, and our mayor, unfortunately, just passed away in November. It was a man by the name of Joe Cabrina, and Joe grew up in Hawaii, had a military career. His wife was originally from Atwood, and they met. Had actually retired to Hawaii. And as he tells it, realized that it's such an expensive place to live that they couldn't really afford to retire there. So they moved to Atwood. So you're in Hawaii and you move to Atwood. So first of all, that's not exactly, you might consider that to be a misfit in some regards. And Joe just didn't move to Atwood. He got on our city council. He's a civil engineer by training, had a career where he built airports and Air Force bases all over the world. And then he came to Atwood and served as mayor and invested his time in order to build infrastructure in Atwood. It led a project to implement a new water plant, a new sewer plant, and was just truly a remarkable individual. And unfortunately, Joe succumbed to cancer after a year-long battle and knew the odds were not good from the start based on the diagnosis. But when I was talking to his wife, Peggy, who I serve on the hospital board with, when he was out in Denver for chemo treatments, he had found this book that was all about civic and municipal governance. And even in the face of prognosis that wasn't good, Peggy said he just felt that was the best reading in the world. And it was marked up and highlighted up, and he had more ideas. And so after a career all over the world in the military, retiring to Hawaii, moving to Atwood, becoming mayor, having cancer, there was still so much to be done for Joe, and he wasn't going to give up. And so you're always there's still so much to be done. So no matter where you go, no matter what stage of life you're in, I would challenge you to remember that great experiences have happened in our past, but you have the opportunity to choose to become a leader, to choose to be to service of others, and that regardless, there's still so much to be done. So with that, I will leave you, and I don't know if do we have time for a couple of questions before we wrap up? One or two? So if anybody has one or two quick questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Yeah, right here.
By that, do you kind of mean by being you and kind of just letting your personality shine through, and kind of like, if that's true, like how are some ways you kind of have your own individuals and kind of set yourself apart in the conventional way of doing things?
I think you hit the nail right on the head. And probably the most obvious way that happened for me was when I wrapped up at K-State. I knew that ultimately getting a traditional job in a corporate structure, those are great opportunities, but I knew that wasn't going to be a fit for me. And so I took this opportunity with the fraternity, and then I kind of had the opportunity to go back home and work on the farm for a summer, and then I kind of fell into this opportunity at home, which then led to the partners. So that kind of unconventional course, as I wrapped up at K-State, is what put me in a place where the opportunity to team up with our partners and ultimately start the business happened. Yeah, right here.
You talked a little bit about like rural Kansas, wanting to be back there. What are some ways you feel like your company has benefited from being a rural area instead of being in an urban environment?
You betcha. That's a great question, because I firmly believe that we have. And some of you in this room probably fall into this boat of folks that if you had the opportunity to go back home, you would love to. If you came from a rural area, and I'm gonna speak directly to that crowd for a few moments, so please forgive me. And that's what exists at home, is that for years our parents have trained us that we're supposed to go to high school and then go get some form of education and ultimately go out and find our place in the world. And it's kind of the American dream that the next generation is better off than the previous generation. And so we've been raised to have professional aspirations that in some regard are challenging to achieve at home. Well, my thought always is that if those opportunities are there, would people gladly take advantage of them? And that's what we found, is that there's lots of folks that had a positive experience growing up in that type of environment. They're not willing to sacrifice professional aspirations, which I totally get. I don't think I wouldn't have been in that boat. But when the opportunities are there, there's a number of folks that are willing to line up and engage in the team. And then the last thing that I would add to that is, because of their passion for the opportunity to come home, it's very easy for them to engage with these kind of core principles that we talk about in terms of, yes, this is the product we're providing, and this is the service or the goods that we're selling, and we have a lot of discussion about how do we continue the success and strategically develop products for the long run in order to assure the long run viability and success of the business. But all of those things are a means to this culture that we want to create in terms of the type of community that we want to live in. And so from that aspect, it becomes a net benefit, because it's very easy to create this unifying goal and direction because of where you're located. So thank you very much. Enjoyed the opportunity.
Thank you, Matt. All right, that concludes our program for this evening. We'd like to once again thank Molly and Matt for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us back in Manhattan. Those were wonderful presentations, and we're privileged to honor you both as this year's DYA recipients.
Thanks to everyone who came out tonight, and don't forget to put your surveys in the box on your way out. Have a great evening.